It was 2:20 in the morning when the sound of gunfire ripped through a quiet Texas neighborhood. Inside a modest two-story home, chaos unfolded. A man lay bleeding on the floor of a bedroom, while his girlfriend screamed for help. Moments earlier, that same girlfriend had stepped into her shower, unaware that her ex-boyfriend, the man she thought she'd left behind, had been hiding in her closet the entire time, holding a bouquet of flowers, a gun, and a deadly mix of heartbreak and rage. Neighbors would later tell police they heard 3 sharp bangs, then a woman's cry echo through the night. When officers arrived, they found a nightmare no one could have imagined: a young man shot multiple times, an ex-boyfriend on the run, and a motive that would send shockwaves across social media. But what could drive someone to hide in a closet, waiting for hours, only to destroy 2 lives in one night? To understand that, we have to go back to where it all began. The calm before the storm. In the small, quiet community of Converse, Texas, just outside San Antonio, 23-year-old Shiatique Desheen Wilson had been struggling to let go of the woman he once called the love of his life. Her name was Maya, a 25-year-old single mom with a kind smile and a strong heart. They had met the usual way, through social media. At first, things were perfect. Wilson was charming, funny, and always made her laugh. But over time, cracks started to show. He became possessive, jealous, always asking where she was, who she was with, why she didn't text back fast enough. Maya loved him once, but she also knew when something wasn't healthy anymore. So she ended it, hoping it would bring peace to both of them. But Wilson didn't see it that way. To him, the breakup wasn't closure, it was betrayal. He sent her message after message, sometimes begging her to talk, other times accusing her of replacing him. Eventually, she stopped responding altogether. That's when things took a darker turn. Friends said Wilson had started drinking more, talking about how he just needed to see her one last time. In his mind, he wasn't planning anything violent, at least not yet. He told himself he only wanted to surprise her, to remind her that what they had was real. But obsession has a way of twisting the truth. On the night of October 26, 2025, Wilson decided to act. He grabbed a box of beatbox wine, a bouquet of flowers, and a loaded gun. According to what he later told detectives, the gun was only for protection, just in case her new guy tried something. Around 1 a.m., Wilson quietly crept into Maya's home while she was away. He slipped in through a back door that didn't close properly. Once inside, he made his way upstairs, and hid inside the bedroom closet. The air was still. The only sound was his own heartbeat and the ticking clock on the nightstand. He sat there for nearly an hour, drinking from the box, scrolling on his phone, watching old videos of him and Maya laughing together. He was lost in the past, waiting for a moment that would never come back. Then, headlights flashed through the window. Maya was home. And she wasn't alone. He heard her voice first, calm, happy, laughing. Then another man's voice, deep, relaxed. Wilson froze. His hand tightened around the flowers. In that instant, something inside him snapped. The woman he came to surprise had moved on. He felt the heat rise up his neck. His chest pounded. His thoughts raced. He told himself, I just need to talk to her. That's all. But deep down, he knew, this wasn't about talking anymore. Maya and her new boyfriend, Noel Miller, went upstairs. They talked quietly for a moment, then she said she was going to take a quick shower. As she walked into the bathroom, Wilson pushed the closet door open, slow and silent. Noel turned, and that's when it happened. The sound of shouting. Then gunfire. 3 shots. Maya ran out of the bathroom, still dripping water, only to find Noel on the ground and Wilson standing there, shaking, crying, gun in hand. What did you do? She screamed. Wilson didn't answer. He just stood there, breathing hard. Then, suddenly, he dropped the flowers, grabbed her phone so she couldn't call for help, and ran. By the time police arrived, Wilson had vanished into the night. He tossed his gun, his phone, and the wilted bouquet into a nearby creek. But no one can run from guilt forever. Within hours, he was arrested at a friend's house just a mile away, still wearing the same clothes from that night. And that's where this tragic story begins. A young woman's home turned into a crime scene. A man's life cut short. And another man's obsession turning into his own undoing. But what really happened in those few moments inside that bedroom? Was it a planned act of jealousy, or did things spiral out of control in a split second? The confession that changed everything. When police finally tracked down Shiatique Desheen Wilson, it was just after sunrise on October 26, 2025. He was found hiding at a friend's house barely a mile from the scene of the shooting, his hands trembling, his clothes still streaked with sweat and gunpowder residue. The arrest was quiet. No chase. No struggle. Wilson simply looked up at the officers and said, I didn't mean for it to go that way. But what did he mean? At the Behar County Sheriff's Office, detectives began piecing together the story. Wilson sat in a cold, gray interrogation room, head down, eyes red, barely speaking. On the table in front of him lay a half-empty beatbox drink carton, his fingerprints all over it. That, along with surveillance footage, would later confirm one crucial detail. He'd been in that house for hours before the shooting happened. Detective Rivera leaned forward and said, "Tell us what happened, Shayatik. Start from when you entered the house." Wilson took a deep breath. His voice was low and uneven. "I just wanted to surprise her," he said. "I brought flowers. I thought maybe she'd talk to me again. I didn't know she had someone else there." He paused, shaking his head. "Then I heard her laughing, with him. It messed with my head. I just lost it." Detective Rivera asked, "You lost it and shot him?" Wilson's eyes filled with tears. "No. He pulled a gun on me first," he blurted out. "I was scared. I just reacted." But the detectives knew something didn't add up. No weapon had been found near the victim, Noel Miller. The only shell casings at the scene came from Wilson's gun. They pressed him again. "Where's the other gun, Shayatik? The one you said Noel had?" He went silent. Then whispered, "I don't know." Meanwhile, forensic teams were working the scene inside the home. They found the flowers, crumpled and bloodstained, lying near the closet door. Beside them, a small trail of footprints led toward the front door. There was a phone on the kitchen counter, cracked from being thrown. And upstairs, in that same bedroom, shell casings were scattered beside the bed. It was clear what had happened. Wilson hadn't come to talk. He came with a gun, and a plan. When the ex-girlfriend, Maya, was interviewed, her voice trembled as she relived the horror. "He was just standing there," she said. "In the closet. I didn't even know he was in my house. I went to take a shower, and then I heard shouting and gunshots. When I ran out, Noel was on the floor." She told police that Wilson looked broken, not angry, as if he couldn't believe what he'd done. "He just kept saying, 'I'm sorry, I'm sorry,' then he grabbed my phone and ran." Her statement helped detectives confirm their timeline, and showed that Wilson had intentionally entered the home hours earlier, waiting for her to return. Later that day, reporters crowded outside the sheriff's office, trying to piece together the details. The story spread fast, from local stations in San Antonio to national outlets. "Man hides in ex-girlfriend's closet with flowers, then shoots her new boyfriend," the headlines read. People online couldn't believe it. Some were furious. Others couldn't stop asking why. Why bring flowers and a gun to the same place? Why wait in silence for an hour? Why turn heartbreak into something deadly? Inside the interrogation room, Detective Rivera ended the session with a chilling question. "Shayatik, do you think she was ever going to take you back?" Wilson's eyes darted to the floor. He swallowed hard. "No," he said quietly. "But I couldn't stand the thought of her with someone else." Rivera nodded slowly. "Then that's not love, son. That's obsession." By the next morning, Wilson was officially charged with murder and booked into the Behar County Jail. His bail was set at $300,000. The district attorney announced that the case would move quickly, given the overwhelming evidence. And just like that, a young man who thought he was walking into a reunion with flowers, was now facing life in prison. But as shocking as that sounds, the story doesn't end there. Because when detectives dug deeper, they discovered something in Wilson's phone that painted an even darker picture of what led up to that night. Something that made them realize this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment mistake. It might have been planned. The messages he never deleted. Detectives seized Shayatik Wilson's phone the morning after his arrest. At first glance, it looked ordinary, a cracked iPhone 12 with a smudged screen and a dying battery. But what was inside it told a much darker story than anything Wilson had confessed. When the digital forensics team unlocked the phone, they found a flood of messages, hundreds of them, all sent to his ex-girlfriend, Maya, in the weeks leading up to the shooting. Most had gone unanswered. At first, they seemed desperate but harmless. "Please just talk to me. I still love you, Maya. I can't move on until we talk." But as time went on, the tone changed. The messages got colder. Angrier. "You can't just throw me away like that. I see you posting with him. That's crazy after everything we had. You'll regret doing me like this." Then, a week before the shooting, he sent something that made Detective Rivera's stomach twist. "I'll see you soon. Don't be scared. You'll know it's me." It wasn't a threat, not directly, but paired with what happened later, it sounded chilling. Even more disturbing were the voice notes. Wilson had recorded himself talking late at night, sometimes rambling, sometimes crying, sometimes angry. One audio clip, just a day before the murder, lasted almost 6 minutes. He said, "I bought the flowers today. Maybe she'll see I still care. But if I catch her with that dude again, I don't know what I'll do. Another note ended with the words, "If I can't have her, no one should." That was the moment detectives stopped calling it a crime of passion. It wasn't spontaneous anymore. It was obsession turned to intent. Detective Rivera met with the district attorney later that day. They agreed to upgrade the charges, from murder to first-degree murder, meaning it was premeditated. Wilson hadn't just lost control. He had been planning the confrontation for days. And the more police dug, the more chilling it got. Maya told investigators that she and Wilson had broken up nearly 4 months before the shooting. She had moved out, changed her number twice, and even told friends that she was afraid he might show up somewhere uninvited. But she never imagined he'd go that far. "He was always sweet in the beginning," Maya said, her voice cracking. "When we first started dating, he used to leave little notes on my car, surprise me with flowers after work. It was cute then. But after we broke up, it turned scary. He started showing up places he shouldn't know I was." She told detectives she once saw him parked outside her job for hours, just watching. When she confronted him, he claimed it was just a coincidence. Now, looking back, she realized it was never coincidence. The police timeline began to fill out clearly. October 25, 2025, around 5:30 p.m., Wilson parked 2 blocks away from Maya's house. He walked there carrying flowers, and a small black pistol hidden under his hoodie. He entered the home through the back door, which Maya often left unlocked for her dog walker. For over 2 hours, he waited in her closet, sipping a beatbox drink, scrolling through old pictures of her, and listening for the sound of her car. When she finally came home with Noelle Miller, Wilson stayed silent. He listened. He heard them laugh, talk, kiss. And something inside him broke. Minutes later, shots rang out. Back at the police station, Rivera replayed one of the voice notes again, this time for the DA. At the end of the clip, Wilson's voice faded into a whisper. "Maybe it's better if we're both gone." The words hit them like a punch. Had he planned to kill himself after shooting Noelle? Was that why he ran, because he couldn't go through with it? They didn't know yet. But one thing was certain, this wasn't just a story of heartbreak gone wrong. It was a story of a man who let obsession consume him until it turned fatal. As the community tried to process what happened, candlelight vigils were held for Noelle Miller, the victim who had simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Friends described him as kind, soft-spoken, and the type of guy who never looked for trouble. Meanwhile, social media lit up with debates. Some people blamed toxic love. Others blamed gun access. But most agreed on one thing: no one saw it coming. And just when detectives thought they had the full picture, another twist emerged. A friend of Wilson's came forward claiming he'd spoken to Shayatik the night before the shooting, and that Wilson had said something that chilled him to the core. He told police. He said he was going to do something that would make her remember him forever. That statement changed everything. Because it meant, this wasn't just rage. It was a plan. A deliberate act meant to scar, to be remembered. The interrogation room. The small gray room at the Camden County Police Department was silent, except for the steady ticking of the wall clock. Across the metal table sat Shayatik Wilson, his wrists cuffed, his eyes fixed on the floor. He hadn't said a word in almost an hour. Detective Rivera leaned back in her chair, studying him. In front of her were photos of the flowers, the gun, and a screenshot of the text messages he sent to Maya before the shooting. Every piece of evidence told the same story: he hadn't come there to surprise her. He'd come there to end something. Finally, Rivera broke the silence. "Shayatik, help me understand this. You brought her flowers, but you also brought a gun. Why?" He looked up slowly. His eyes were red, but not from crying, from exhaustion, maybe. "It wasn't supposed to go that way," he said quietly. "I just wanted to see her. I wanted her to remember what we had." Rivera slid one of the photos across the table, the one of Noelle Miller lying in the hallway, lifeless. But she didn't remember that, did she? She remembered this. Wilson stared at the photo for a long moment before turning away. He muttered something under his breath, barely audible. He wasn't supposed to be there. Rivera leaned in. "You knew she moved on. You saw them together online. You went there anyway. You hid in her closet for 2 hours. That's not an accident, Shayatik, that's a choice." He didn't answer. Instead, he started tapping his fingers on the table, slow, rhythmic. Tap, tap, tap. It was as if he was counting something in his head. When detectives pressed further, Wilson began to talk, not out of guilt, but out of confusion. His version of events was twisted, filled with emotional contradictions. "When I saw them walk in, I froze. I could hear them laughing. That laugh, she used to do that with me. It's like she forgot everything we went through. I just wanted her to see me, to know I still cared. But then he touched her, and something in my chest just snapped. He described grabbing the gun, not even realizing what he was doing. He said it was like his body moved before his mind caught up. But Rivera wasn't buying it. She reminded him of the voice note, the messages, the threats. He looked at her, eyes wide. I didn't mean it like that, he said. I wasn't gonna hurt her. I just wanted her attention. Rivera slammed her hand on the table. You got it. You got her attention, Shayatik. But not the way you wanted. You didn't just hurt her, you destroyed her life, and yours too. For a brief second, he looked like he might cry. Then his face went blank again. At least now she'll never forget me, he whispered. Those words sent a chill through everyone in the room. Because they weren't spoken out of guilt, they were spoken out of pride. Outside the interrogation room, Rivera spoke with the lead prosecutor. He's detached. He's not sorry. He's just gone. It's like he doesn't understand what he did. The prosecutor nodded. That's obsession. Once it eats you alive, there's nothing left to feel remorse with. While Wilson sat in silence, Maya was at the hospital, sedated, surrounded by family, still in shock. She hadn't said much since the shooting. When detectives told her Wilson had been arrested, she only said one thing. He always said he'd do something big for me one day. I just never thought it would be this. News of the murder spread fast across New Jersey and Philadelphia. Social media was flooded with photos of Maya and Noel, happy, young, unaware of what was coming. People called it the flower closet killing. A romantic gesture turned nightmare. Some said Wilson was mentally unstable. Others said he was just evil. But no one could make sense of how someone could go from love to murder in the same breath. As Wilson sat in his holding cell that night, cameras caught him doing something strange. He took the small paper cup of water the officer gave him, dipped his finger in it, and started writing something on the wall. When the guard looked later, they saw what he wrote. Just one word. Forever. The trial of a broken love. It was a gray, rainy morning in Camden County Superior Court when the trial of Shayatik Wilson finally began. The courthouse was packed, reporters, law students, true crime fans, and families who had been following the case since the shocking night of October 26, 2025. Everyone wanted to hear the same thing. What would Maya say when she faced the man who had destroyed everything she loved? The courtroom was silent when Wilson entered, escorted by 2 deputies. He looked thinner, quieter, and strangely calm. His orange jumpsuit was neatly folded at the sleeves, and his hands were clasped like a man who'd already accepted his fate. He didn't look at the cameras. He only looked toward the front, where Maya sat, surrounded by her family, her hands trembling slightly in her lap. When their eyes met for the first time since the shooting, she froze. He didn't blink. He didn't flinch. He just watched her, with the same hollow expression he wore in that interrogation room. The prosecutor, Assistant District Attorney Laura Chen, started her opening statement. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is not a story of love. It's a story of control, of obsession, and of what happens when love turns into possession. The defendant, Shayatik Wilson, didn't go to that house with flowers to win her back. He went there with a gun to make sure no one else could have her. She spoke slowly, each word cutting through the air like glass. She played the voice notes that detectives had found on Wilson's phone, his own voice saying, "If I can't have her, no one should." The courtroom went dead silent. Even Wilson's public defender lowered his head. When it was Maya's turn to testify, the room changed. The audience leaned forward. She was nervous, her voice was soft, shaky, but she wanted to be heard. She began from the start. How they met. How everything seemed perfect at first. How he'd show up with flowers, surprise her at work, send her good morning texts every single day. But then came the possessiveness. The checking her phone. The showing up unannounced. The guilt tripping. If I didn't answer his call, he'd send 10 messages in a row. Sometimes he'd drive to my place just to see if I was home. I used to think that meant he cared a lot, but now I know it meant he couldn't let go. Her voice cracked as she spoke about the weeks before the shooting. She had blocked him on everything, but he still found ways to contact her. Fake numbers. Voicemails. Emails from random addresses with just one word, remember. The prosecutor asked if she ever thought he would hurt her. She paused. No. I thought he was just hurting. I didn't think he'd actually kill someone. Then, for the first time, Maya looked at Wilson directly. You didn't love me. You wanted to own me. And now, you've taken someone I can never get back. Wilson stared at her, emotionless. Then he whispered something no one expected. You still look beautiful. Gasps filled the courtroom. The judge slammed his gavel, shouting for order. Maya turned away, crying quietly into her mother's shoulder. The defense tried to argue that Wilson was mentally unstable, that he acted in a moment of emotional disturbance, not out of premeditation. They called a psychiatrist who claimed Wilson had been suffering from acute attachment disorder, a condition where a person becomes dangerously dependent on one emotional bond. But the prosecution had something stronger: the planning. The flowers. The messages. The hours spent hiding. The voice notes. All proof that this wasn't a sudden breakdown, it was a decision. The most haunting moment came when the prosecution played the security camera footage from Maya's backyard. It showed Wilson entering quietly through the side gate, flowers in one hand, gun in the other, head lowered, hood up. He looked calm. Too calm. You could hear the jury collectively hold their breath. The image of a man carrying flowers and a gun in the same moment was something no one would ever forget. As the day ended, the court adjourned for a recess. Reporters rushed to file their updates. Flower closet murder trial shocks Camden County. Ex-boyfriend calmly watched victim's girlfriend testify against him. But inside the courthouse, everyone could feel it. This case wasn't about guilt anymore. It was about understanding why. Why someone who once brought flowers could bring death. Why love could turn into something so dark. When court ended for the day, Wilson asked to speak privately to his attorney. The guards allowed it, under supervision. In a low voice, he said, "If I could go back, I'd still bring her flowers. I just wouldn't let him walk in first." The attorney froze. He realized, Wilson still didn't understand what he'd done. To him, it wasn't murder. It was a moment ruined. The verdict and the final words. It was October 26, 2025, exactly 1 year to the day since the tragedy that shattered two families and shook Camden County to its core. And on that day, the courtroom once again filled to capacity. Everyone was waiting for one thing: the verdict. The tension was thick. You could almost feel the collective heartbeat of the room. Shayatique Wilson sat at the defense table, staring blankly ahead. No tears. No emotion. Just silence. Across from him, Maya sat with her parents. She was pale but steady, holding onto her mother's hand. This was the moment she had waited for, the chance to close a chapter she never asked to be part of. The jury foreperson stood up, a folded paper in hand. Everyone held their breath. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Shayatique Wilson, guilty of first-degree murder and guilty of unlawful possession of a firearm." The room erupted, sobs, gasps, whispers. Maya broke down quietly, covering her face. Her mother held her tightly as reporters rushed to the hallways to break the news first. But Wilson? He didn't flinch. He just sat there, eyes locked on Maya, as if trying to memorize her one last time. When it was time for sentencing, Judge Alvarez gave him a chance to speak. For a long moment, Wilson said nothing. Then, in a calm, almost cold voice, he spoke. "I didn't go there to kill anyone. I went there because I loved her. I wanted her back. But love makes you do crazy things. You think you're losing someone, and you lose yourself instead." The courtroom fell silent. Then the judge replied, firmly but not without empathy. "Love doesn't pull a trigger, Mr. Wilson. You did." And with that, she sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As deputies led him away, Wilson turned his head toward Maya one last time and whispered something that the microphones barely caught. "You'll always be mine." Those words echoed through the courtroom like a ghost. It wasn't rage. It wasn't sorrow. It was obsession, the same darkness that had been growing in him long before the flowers, the messages, the gun. Outside the courthouse, rain began to fall, just like it had the night of the murder. Maya stood under an umbrella, surrounded by friends and reporters, her voice steady for the first time in months. "This isn't love," she said softly. "This is what happens when someone confuses control with caring. If you ever feel unsafe, speak up. Don't ignore the signs. I did, and I lost someone who didn't deserve to die." Her words hit millions online. Clips of her statement went viral within hours, sparking conversations about toxic relationships, stalking, and domestic violence. Across TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, people used the hashtag #FlowersAndFire, turning a tragedy into a warning for others. Beyond the myths, into the slop. This story isn't just about a man, a woman, and a gun. It's about the dangerous myth we've built around love, that love is supposed to hurt, to burn, to be crazy. But real love doesn't hide in closets. It doesn't follow you, control you, or destroy the people around you. What happened on October 26, 2025, wasn't an act of passion, it was an act of possession. And it reminds us all of one painful truth. When obsession wears the mask of love, nobody wins. Maya continues to rebuild her life, one quiet day at a time. Noel Miller's family started a foundation in his name, dedicated to helping victims of domestic violence. And Shayatique Wilson? He now spends every day behind cold steel bars, serving a life sentence, with nothing but time to remember the moment that turned his forever into a prison.